I'm Gregory Floyd, President Local 237 Teamsters. Welcome to our third installment of Keeping Our Members Informed. But before we begin, we will have a moment of silence for our deceased members that suffered from COVID-19 and died from COVID-19. And we will also have a moment of silence for those still suffering from COVID-19. Before we begin, I'd like to take a point of privilege. In Minnesota, we see turmoil because the police killed a man. His name is George Floyd. I got a lot of calls. He's not related to me as I know it today, but it's sad what's happening in our country. In the middle of a pandemic, we have a near riot happening. And we want to pray for calm. We want to pray for peace. We want cooler heads to prevail. But we also want to remember, be a good citizen. Be good to one another, because that's what this is about. These are horrifying times. There's so much pain and uncertainty felt by everyone. We know it hasn't been easy for you. You made personal sacrifices, yet you go to work every day. You have a tough job, and only the toughest can do it. And you do it well. Because of you, lives of New Yorkers have been made better. They can always count on you to deliver. On behalf of all New Yorkers, thank you, Local 237 members. I want you to know that we hear your concerns. We've purchased PPE. Although we cannot outright supply you with everything, we tried to supplement what the agencies in the city and the state should have given us. We've arranged for free COVID-19 testing through Emblem Health for our members in New York City. The reason it's only the members in New York City is because Emblem Health services New York City. They do have a location in Babylon, but that's for any New York City worker who lives in Long Island. They can go there. We will continue to post legal advice, and we will continue to provide COVID-19 updates as they become available. Please check our website, Facebook page. So, to get started, we want to give you some information. We have received many questions from our members, and it's impossible to go through all of them. But here's a chart with some information, and I can't stress this chart enough. It's very important. 2020 census. Why do I keep saying the 2020 census? It only takes 10 minutes to fill out online. They mailed postcards to us with a code. They've mailed the package to us. And it is very important, especially in these times, that we do not lose congressional seats, because it means losing congressional seats. We need all the representation in Washington we could get. And it also means funding. For those who are working in schools, that means funding to fund your employment. That means funding for school children. That means funding for the state, the city. And believe me, we're going to need every nickel that we can get. We also have Stacy Braun for our people in our welfare fund. 6 hours of free counseling. 6 hours of free counseling. Please take advantage of that. I can't stress it enough. And I'll continue to say, please take advantage. They've been around for 5 years. A lot of our members, majority of our members, have not even touched that benefit. It's a great benefit. Imagine if you had touched it 5 years ago, what kind of financial shape would you be in now? Local 237 Legal Services Plan is here for you. MetLife is now our insurance carrier. Our insurance has gone up. Our death benefit is going up from $11,500 to $15,000 as of May 1st. Additional security and supplemental, which is our annuity. Please, please, please have a beneficiary assigned to that account. You just never know. Pension benefits. We have the New York City retirement system for those who are in citywide and housing. We have the members on Long Island and Javits. They belong to the New York State and local retirement systems. And we also have the Board of Education Pension Fund for those who are working for the Department of Education. It's still named the Board of Education Pension Fund. We have those numbers for you right there on the screen. Now, we have a very special and important guest. He is our New York State Comptroller, Tom DiNapoli. He's going to come and give us advice on COVID. He's going to give us advice on the financial situation with New York State. He's going to just tell us exactly where we are in this state. Tom, thank you for coming on, keeping our members informed. And we think you're doing a great job. And I believe this is your the third term, second elected term. So
third elected term.
Third elected term.
Yeah. The years go by, Greg.
Yes, they do.
But I thank you for inviting me. And let me just say, I really appreciate your great leadership of Local 237. I feel like it was just yesterday we were at your swearing in, and James Hoffa was there, and how the world has changed so dramatically in really just a very short period of time. But your leadership is needed now more than ever. Certainly the dedication of your members is needed now more than ever. The great work that your colleagues are doing for New York City, out on Long Island for municipalities and school districts and libraries. As I've learned from you over the years, the incredible variety of job titles and positions that your members fill. I mean, really frontline essential workers. And how somber it was and appropriate for you to start our discussion today, reminding everyone that people are still suffering from exposure to the virus. You've had members that have been sick, members that have died, and that's just a reminder that our public workers really have been impacted by what's going on, and our public workers are keeping our city and all of our communities working. And that's why the role of the union is so very, very important, because even this forum, Greg, you're providing information. Many of us are working. I'm in the office, but I'm also home at times, and many people have only been working from home. There's a tremendous sense of isolation, and you're providing communication. You're providing a bridge, that outreach, that mental health opportunity in terms of counseling information that's available, help from the union. This whole is more important than ever. So, I know we have a lot to talk about, but I really want to commend you and your leadership team for really representing your members so well and so forcefully at a time that, I believe we'll get through this emergency, but it's going to take a long time for us to rebuild and recover. And once again, Local 237 members will be on the front line of bringing our city, Long Island, our state back to what it was before we were hit by this terrible, terrible pandemic. So thank you for everything you're doing.
Thank you, Tom. And could you give us an overview of the current New York State and New York City economic and budget challenges?
Yeah. Well, no surprise, I'm sure, to anyone. And obviously our first concern is public health and the well-being of the people of our city and of our state. And I think the governor has been appropriate to say as we reopen we want to keep the science in mind and make sure that we do it safely, because health and well-being comes first. That being said, and certainly what we do in the Comptroller's office, we look at the other piece of it, which is the economic impact, really the economic devastation. As you know, we look at many different metrics and measures in terms of what's happening with the economy, and then by extension, the impact on revenue for New York State and New York City. And as I think everybody's been reading in the paper, the economy's been on hold. So that's just created a whole series of revenue shocks, and you could just imagine, certainly for the state, just look at one important revenue source. This important revenue source for the city as well, sales tax revenue, down, for the month of April, over 24%, a really big hit. For the state, April 15th is normally tax collection day, so we get a big revenue influx with that. Well, in response to the pandemic, as you know, Washington and Albany also has delayed the filing for taxes to July 15th. So a big chunk of money that we would normally get has been delayed. The kinds of fees that come out of and taxes out of real estate transactions, and we know how that's been certainly on hold in the middle of all this. For New York City, property taxes, biggest revenue source. There are many people that are having a problem paying their property taxes. They're laid off. They're a business, and their business is closed. And so if they're not paying property tax through rent or directly, if you're a homeowner, that has a big impact on city revenue. So you multiply all of this. So for the state, our financial plan shows a current year budget gap of over $13 billion. We have a particular challenge in this first quarter of our fiscal year. Fiscal year starts April 1st because we have big payouts, especially for school aid. City's projecting at this point a 2-year budget gap of close to $9 billion. Say it again?
2-year budget gap.
Yeah, and one of the challenges is, as we get more information, the concern is that, especially for New York City with the reopening still not happening, some of those numbers, could very easily get worse before they get better. So on the positive side, we have started to see some of the money come from Washington. So for the state, we've already gotten a little over $5 billion deposited in the state treasury as part of the coronavirus relief fund. The city has gotten some of their money as well. Part of the challenge there, Greg, is that we're still trying to get clarification from Treasury as to what are appropriate expenses to charge against that $5 billion. But that's going to help us in the short run. Also, under the state budget, as you know, the governor and the division of the budget was given extraordinary powers if we do not get the revenue to come in to make budget adjustments, and that would be obviously spending cuts or to do borrowing beyond what would normally be authorized. The problem there is an obvious one. The governor has indicated that if we still have a shortfall, there could be as much as $8 billion in cuts to local assistance. Local assistance includes money to New York City and to our other localities and school districts, which would only transfer the problem to another level of government. So, what does it all come back to? Because I don't think you can just cut your way out of this or borrow your way out of it. We really do need more help from Washington. And Governor Cuomo was there yesterday meeting with the president. We saw the House passed a very important bill that included significant money for New York State and New York City. The federal aid that we need, Greg, has to go not only to the state to plug our gap so we don't transfer our problem to the local level, but New York City and all of our localities need direct help as well because they have their own shortfalls, in terms of revenue. So, some people are talking about, tax increases. I think that might be tough to do in this environment right now because there's so much devastation in the economy overall. But, to me, what we really need, and we need it sooner than later, is that additional help from Washington. So I hope they could put aside the partisan differences, work off of that House bill that has passed with a lot of bipartisan support, at least from the New York delegation. We need more help from Washington if we're going to avoid cuts to New York City, cuts to our school district and our municipalities that will really impact on, potentially the public workforce at a time that we need our public workers to help us get this economy moving again and provide essential services.
Now you mentioned raising taxes is probably not a good option, but when I hear the state being cut and the state has a deficit, then the city has a deficit, and then raising taxes, what I hear is the problem's not going to go away. We're just trying to shift it from one place to another.
Yeah. I mean, I do think, look, I mean, there are some proposals to raise different kinds of taxes. I think we need to keep in mind, New York already has a surcharge on higher income New Yorkers. That's often one of the taxes that's talked about. And after what the federal government did with the change in with the tax reform, especially that limitation on state and local tax deductibility, there has been a concern that some people will choose to move out of New York because of the tax changes. And some of that is anecdotal, rather than hard numbers. But there's no doubt, we can't dispute that already higher income New Yorkers pay a disproportionate share of the income tax. So the question really becomes, in the middle of a crisis, can we, in a thoughtful way, come up with revenue raises, whether they be taxes or fees, that will make sense in the long run to not be counterproductive? And I think it's just hard. Look, I don't think anybody wants to see, I hope nobody wants to see budget cuts that'll impact on services now. But how we do that in a smart way under the pressure of the crisis, I don't know that we'll get the most thoughtful analysis as far as what tax policy should be. There's certainly a question of equity as far as our taxes. We haven't dealt with a lot of that for a long time. But to me, what makes the most sense is to recognize that the revenue shortfalls, it's not because of mismanagement. The city was doing very well. The economy was doing great. New York State was doing well also. The economic devastation is because of what happened with the pandemic. It wasn't because of mismanagement. So Washington, which has different kind of revenue sources and obviously deeper pockets than we do for the city and the state, we appreciate the help so far, but we really need them to do even more. That, to me, obviously we're going to be careful with our spending from here on in. The mayor has a savings program. The governor obviously has a hiring freeze and is managing tightly the finances. But the real solution for now to get us through this time is more direct aid from Washington. That's really what we need.
Yes. And do you have any concerns about the future, the health and security of our public pension systems?
Well, it's an important question, and I appreciate your leadership on the pension issue. You've been an important trustee, with the city funds, and my role for the state fund is as trustee. In the short run, there's no doubt that we're taking a hit. The state plan, for your members who are part of our system, we value the pension fund on March 31st. It's the end of the state fiscal year. So needless to say, Greg, March 31st was not a great time in the markets. And again, not that we're only invested in the stock market. As you know, we have a very diversified portfolio. But there's no doubt that for the year that ended on March 31st, we're going to have a negative for the pension fund. The city funds will value on June 30th. And the markets, have recovered, not completely, but, you may have a more favorable June 30th date than we have at March 31st. But, for our fund, and certainly for the city funds as well, when you compare how well funded we are versus most public pension plans in the country, in New York, this is one of the big pluses. We have well-funded pension plans. The New York plan in the last calculation was 96% funded, virtually fully funded. So we are going to take a hit, and our funded status will go down, but we have no problem paying benefits. We have plenty of liquidity. We're going to weather the storm. Greg, you remember 10 years ago when the Great Recession hit, we lost, for the New York plan, we lost 26% value in 1 year. And I can assure you and assure your colleagues, we will not have a loss like that this year. It won't be anywhere near 26%. We're doing the final numbers now. I don't have them yet. It'll be a single digit negative after 4 years of positive. So, we average out the return over 5 years. We'll manage it, but the retirees don't have to worry. And certainly those who may be close to retiring, you don't have to worry either. And we'll get through this tough time, and we'll come back as strong as we've ever been.
It's certainly good to know. I mean, you remember 2008, and that was a really trying time in finances.
And Greg, remember 10 years before that we had 9/11, and now we have, it's like every 10 years we have these shocks and that that really affect the markets. So, while we're on the pension, let's mention quickly, the legislature's in town this week, and one of the issues they're working on is enhancing the benefit option for, God forbid, any public worker in the state that is affected by COVID, and as I said, God forbid, would lose their life, to be sure that their families can get an enhanced benefit for their survivors. And they're actually fine-tuning the details of that bill as we speak, but everybody's on board with doing something. So for those of your members who know of one of the colleagues that may have lost their life through this pandemic, there is some good news on the way. It's going to be retroactive, and it's going to cover this time frame of the pandemic. And I think it shows the governor and the legislature values our public workers and understands that for families who survive this, if they lose their loved one who's a public worker, we should be looking out to give them enhanced benefits. That's the least we can do, and that's going to happen.
I believe it's everyone after who passed away from, they're going to assume from any COVID-related illness from March 1st going forward, their spouses, their families will get the death benefit, pensions, and health coverage.
Yeah, exactly. They're fine-tuning the time frames, but my understanding is that March 1st date is still the date. So it's a presumption that in effect it's an accident related to COVID with enhanced benefits for the survivors.
Okay. And as soon as that legislation is finalized, and as soon as the governor signs it and we have a final bill, we will certainly be giving the information out to all of our members, the survivors. We will post it, we will send it out, and you will be kept informed. Yes. So, Tom, what can our members do now to help their financial situation in New York State, New York City? And I think the one thing they could do, the very least they could do, is fill out the 2020 census and can encourage their neighbors, their family members to fill out their 2020 census.
Yeah.
And they could go online and do that in 10 minutes or less. Yeah. Can you tell us why it's important?
Yeah.
Every New York.
I'm glad you raised it. I got to echo what you said earlier. I heard you. You're right. First of all, I filled out mine, and I think I did it in 9.5 minutes. I think I beat the 10 minutes. I was surprised how easy it was. I remember the old days you'd fill out the paper, and it actually, I think it was shorter and certainly much easier process than I would have thought. It really gets to the points that you made at the outset. Number one, I mean, the census is required by the U.S. Constitution with the premise of that's how the representation in the House of Representatives is determined. So that's the jumping off point for it and why it goes back to, when the country was founded. And New York has lost representation over the years. And part of that is that we have had undercounts historically. We know many other states have populations that are growing faster than ours. Good chance we would probably lose a seat in the next go around anyway. But we want to avoid that if we can, and we don't want to lose more than one seat. We've lost too many seats in recent years. But in the face of what we're going through, and what I said earlier about the importance of federal funding, the second point that you made earlier is the one to emphasize. Census data has now been used for reimbursement and federal formulas for aid for New York City and for localities. Anytime we go for any kind of federal aid, it often defaults back to, what are the census numbers? So any undercount shortchanges us. And when you look at the history, the governor's pointed this out, and my office, as you know, has done reports on this. We are a net giver to Washington, to the federal government. For every dollar we send, we get back about 90 cents. The average for states, for every dollar they send, they get back $1.21. So we give and other states take. And part of the challenge there, and granted, New York generally is a wealthier state. I understand some of that. But I'm sure part of the challenge is we just haven't had adequate count of our numbers. And the last I saw, Greg, statewide, we were only at about 50, I think it was 54, 55% response rate. So we still have a ways to go. for people to respond to the census. And I know with everything going on with the pandemic, there may be more urgent needs. But on the other hand, a lot of people, because you're isolating and you're home a lot and can't do all the fun things we normally do, you also have time at home, to take the 10 minutes to do that. And as we have the recovery, getting more support from Washington is going to be tied to that census moving forward. So you're absolutely right. We got to get the word out there. Fill out that census. It's easy to do. Nobody's going to get in trouble for filling out the census. Immigration and law enforcement, they can't use census information to go after anyone. I know sometimes that's a concern. It really is a very important and easy way to help all of us in New York City and New York State. Fill out that census, do it online, easy to do. If I could do it online without a problem, anybody could do it online without a problem.
Now, you mentioned there's only 54% participation so far.
Yeah.
Do you know what the deadline is, when the deadline is?
No, I don't remember off the top of my head what the deadline is. I know there's still time, which is why we're all emphasizing it. But I'm told offline, I think it's sometime in October. So there is. Don't quote me on the final day. But I know the deadline's not imminent because we're all reminding everybody. We still got time to go because it won't be in effect. Again, the prime purpose is for the federal reapportionment, and that won't go into effect till 2022. So I'm sure we still have plenty of time before they need the numbers to then do the reapportionment.
Okay, so we'll be emphasizing filling out the census until October 2020. It's very important. It only happens every 10 years.
Yep.
And representation will be determined for the next 10 years over what we do with the census. Tom, is there anything else you'd like to add or tell our members before we say goodbye?
Well, I just want to say thank you to all of your members for just the outstanding public service. Many check our website out. Whatever your search engine is, put in New York State Comptroller. You'll see on the front of our webpage we have a COVID-19 financial survival toolkit. You can click on it, and there's the opportunity to really access, similar to what you have up for the union, different services and recommendations on how to survive this challenging time. Always a lot of information on there about the retirement system. Make sure you have your beneficiary information up to date. We're encouraging everyone to make sure that if they're getting paid, get direct deposit, and for your retirees also direct deposit. A lot of folks don't want to go to the bank these days, and there's still some folks that rely on the paper. And in this environment, more important than ever, to do direct deposit. And still, the most popular part of our website is unclaimed funds. If you've got lost money, we got it, and we want to return it to you. So just go to that New York State Comptroller website. You can click on all these different bits of information that I'm mentioning. And, especially if you got some free time, search on unclaimed funds. If you don't have money, I guarantee someone in your family does, or your church, your synagogue, your mosque, or a business that you may be familiar with. And you may even have an account in the name of a deceased relative. It could be a parent or a grandparent. And we might need more documentation, but many of the accounts are in the name of deceased people. And sometimes folks don't realize if you're an heir, you can claim that money as well. And in this environment, we could all use a little extra cash. So if you remember nothing else of what I said, Greg.
Tom, tell us about unclaimed funds. A lot of people might be listening or watching us and say, what is that? Tell us.
What is that? So a lot of folks, they see, I just saw it recently, in the newspaper, all those pages and pages of all these names that banks are saying, we're looking for you. Unclaimed funds are often old bank accounts that have become dormant because someone has moved. They haven't kept up their contact information. Could be an uncashed check, like a health insurance reimbursement check, or it could be, someone might have left you a benefit from a life insurance policy. Could be an old financial account, a stock account. There are various ways that these accounts can be declared dormant. It's usually because someone has moved and they didn't keep up their contact information. Under the law, after a certain period of time, the bank or the financial institution, the insurance company, they can't hold on to those assets. They're called abandoned property. They're turned over to the controller's office, and we are custodian then for what we call unclaimed funds. And we hold the accounts until you find us or we find you. And we made it very easy for you to search online, put your name in the system, and if there's a match, you'll actually can apply online and get your check in a matter of days. As I said, if it's an inheritance situation, we might need, death certificate, a little more documentation. But right on the website, there's information there, and then 800 number that can be called. We have people, during business hours, Monday to Friday, that can help you through the process. But Greg, believe it or not, we have accounts valued now at about $16 billion, billion with a B, of unclaimed funds. So there's a lot of money there. Now, I don't want you to think I'm sitting on $16 billion in a treasure chest. The money actually is put to good use, but we keep enough in reserve based on historic trends to be able to reimburse people. We're paying out now well over $1 million a day in unclaimed funds to New Yorkers. But for everything we pay out, more money comes in because new accounts become dormant. So really, folks should go on the website, and then Greg, they'll be able to thank you for having me mention this if they get some money. And if you get contacted by a group that says we'll get unclaimed funds for you if you give us 15%, don't follow that. Don't answer that letter or that phone call. There's no fee. There's no charge. Come directly to the controller's office. You'll get 100% of the money that you're owed. And in some cases, actually, you may have earned interest on the account.
Wow. So our members out there, please check the controller website, unclaimed funds. Believe me, it's an added value if you have money that's unclaimed. If you don't, you lose nothing. You may find a coworker or a family member or somebody that may have unclaimed funds, and you can alert them.
And you'll be very popular with your family members when you find the money.
Certainly will. So thank you, Tom, for coming on, keeping our members informed. We appreciate you giving us some of your time, and you're doing a great job. Keep up the good work.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you for your great leadership.
Thank you. And if we didn't get to your questions, please follow up with business agents, and we'll have additional broadcasts soon. Thank you for tuning in. To view this broadcast again, check out our Facebook page, YouTube page, or web for details. For any of your coworkers who weren't able to tune in, it's going to be up on YouTube, Facebook, and our website. And once again, thank you. And everyone, please be safe.